I would go up to them and I'd be like, all right, give me 3 minutes and it will be the best 3 minutes you've ever spent listening to someone in your life.
Give me 3 minutes and it'll be the best. I thought you were going somewhere with that. I was like,
Okay, maybe I'll have to adjust that. It's a
oh
double
my.
pickup line. Double pick.
All right, welcome, guys. Today is another episode of Evolution Podcast, and today I have a special guest. And the reason why I want to tell you, first of all, before I have this guy, he's a well accomplished entrepreneur. And here's the most interesting part about it: he's a young guy that just got out of college. And the reason why I want you guys to listen to him is I want you to listen to why he started his entrepreneurial endeavors. So, Matt, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, well, thank you so much, Emmanuel, for having me on today. Normally, I'm the one asking the questions, so it's exciting to be on the other end of it today. My name is Matt Nusom. I'm a recent graduate from Hobart William Smith Colleges. I have a podcast called Entrepreneurial Endeavors, which we can get into how that came into fruition. And I am currently onboarding to start a financial advisory position at Deloitte this coming July.
Well, congratulations, man, on graduation. So, how was college, man? Was it all beers, booze, and parties, or?
For some, I was definitely a workhorse during it, but it was the best 4 years of my life, and I'm excited to see how they set me up for the future.
Gotcha. So, okay, so I'm very curious here. So, a lot of people go to college, right? And when I was in college, I was not thinking about being an entrepreneur. When I was in college, I was thinking about just doing stupid stuff. And so, I'm curious, what had you on that mindset of, I'm going to stay away from drugs, I'm going to stay away from party, and some fornication.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I definitely, I understand the kind of mentality of wanting to do those things, and don't get me wrong, you have to work hard and play hard in order to, have a fruitful life. But I've always had this entrepreneurial kick in me ever since I was a kid. I used to sell tap water on my dead end cul-de-sac to people who drove by for 50 cents. And I always kind of loved the idea of the hustle. I flipped sneakers when I was in middle school. And so when I got to college, I knew about my specific institution having a lot of entrepreneurial opportunities. They even had an entrepreneurial minor, which I ended up picking up. And so that kind of put me on the path of being interested in it from a more professional sense. And that kind of led me to participating in what we have. It's called the pitch competition. I can get into that a little bit if you'd like. But that was
Yeah, yeah,
really
yeah, yeah.
the
Let's
pinnacle
talk
moment.
about it. Pitch competition. So what was it about?
Yeah, so it's something that is really big at our school, and I know a lot of other institutions might have it as well. It's essentially a Shark Tank competition, right? So
Okay.
students will come up with their business idea and either do it in a teams or do it individually, and they go through basically a weeding out process. So you'll have 30 to 40 ideas every single year, and you create a business proposition. You actually manifest the project as much as you possibly can to hopefully get to the end result, which would be the last four contestants that present it in front of an investor panel.
So are we talking about real money here when you actually pitch? Is it like real investments? There's actual real investors actually throwing cash into ideas.
Yeah, yeah. So the grand prize is $10,000, which is really amazing. And then a lot of times, some of the investors that watch the competition or are alumni of the university that like the idea will also throw in other venture, funds as well.
Gotcha. So did you win the 10 grand?
Yeah, so it was my sophomore year, so COVID was in its fullest swing. I knew I wanted to participate in it. I had a professor who I was really close with that said, let's make it a goal by the end of senior year that you win the thing. And so, unfortunately, I had too much time on my hands as a sophomore in COVID, and so I ended up just putting all my effort and energy into creating this sustainable design company. It's called Symbio. It reimagined and redesigned the waste disposal process for elementary schools by designing a lunch tray and waste bin that correlates in order to increase composting costs and reduce landfill fees in order to create a more sustainable and economic school system.
Okay, gotcha. So talk to me about the podcast. How many monthly listeners do you have, and what's the goal? What are you trying to? Because obviously, you have 10 grand. You could have put a 10 grand into the product, but you to put a 10 grand into the podcast. So why the podcast?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've always had a passion for not only speaking, but from learning from others. And the idea of this podcast was to initially take notable alumni from our institution and have them share their stories, whether it be through an entrepreneurial lens or the lens of a liberal arts education, which is to say anyone can go through a liberal arts cycle and major in any what subject that they want, but end up creating a business or an idea that is unique to their own. So I initially had the podcast created to interview these entrepreneurs. And our first few episodes were these small business concepts. They're actually, some of them were past winners of the pitch competition who had made their products reality. And since then, it's kind of progressed into just interviewing very notable people who have been through HWS, who have been through the liberal arts cycle, and how they've taken their teachings and what advice they give to current college students.
Gotcha. So I'm just curious, how are you finding your guests?
Yeah. So for we have a big transitionary period, which we can get into in a little bit. But initially, we had the advancement office, communications office, and then good old fashioned search and discovery through sites like LinkedIn or just social media to find individuals who had come from our school and would be willing to talk. And so I give a lot of credit to the advancement office and the alumni relations for not only seeing the promise in the podcast itself, but then also trusting in me that I could have a fruitful conversation with these high notable alumni. And so that was kind of the feeder that got us our guests on the episode.
Got you. Okay, so now I'm going to throw you on the spot here since you're doing a lot of interviews. So let's say I'm coming in there and I have let's say put me on a let's kind of switch roles here. I am a software CEO. I'm coming into your podcast. You have me as a guest. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. What are we going to talk about?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're software, I mean, here's the thing. I think a lot of times people specify what their episode is going to be strictly on who the individual is. And so, yeah, I would ask you questions about software, maybe about, the promisings and happenings of whether it be like AI and ChatGPT or Silicon Valley as a whole. But I think it's also more important to learn about why you got into software in the first place. What about it intrigues you? And what a piece of advice would you give someone looking to get into the computer science or tech business fields? I think that's just as important as it is to have that conversation than a technical conversation about the specifics of software. I also think it opens it up to more listeners so that they, even if they're not interested in specifically software, they can learn advice from someone who is a CEO, who is a leader, and who has a company.
All right, don't hate me. Don't hate me. Okay, but this obviously, we have to hear from our sponsors. So today's video is sponsored by Ryzen Results. So Ryzen Results provides virtual assistant services to small business owners, independent sales reps, and independent sales agents. Now, as you can see in the discussion here that I had with Matt, if you're a business owner, it's very important. I'm going to say this, it's very important that you have somebody who is manning the phones, who's cold calling, who's helping you get more clients, managing your social media or, helping you generate leads or generate interest from the existing leads that you currently have. So if you're a business owner and you're looking for a way to, 10x your business by actually growing by leveraging staff for an affordable cost, then go ahead and click the link in the description or go to rizonresults.com to claim your free trial of your Ryzen Results virtual assistant. They've got a 7-day free trial of a virtual assistant. So go ahead and click the link in the description and let's go ahead and go back to the podcast. Okay, so now I'm very intrigued here because obviously you've interviewed a lot of entrepreneurs and athletes from, what I saw. What are the common traits that you'd say have differentiated, the ultra successful, the successful, and the almost successful entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because I don't think necessarily success is the leading factor in terms of how my interviews have gone with particular people, but rather their personality and their internal characteristics. I'll give you a good example of this because we interviewed an alumni he's pretty young. I think he's just turned 30, and he has a company called Hempatecture. And what it is they created a insulation and concrete substitute out of hemp that it allows them to build construction, build insulation within houses. And it's not a massive company. It is rapidly growing. But the way that this individual was able to show his passion for not only sustainable corporate structures, but also his product specifically gave me a lot of like, man, this guy can be successful. This guy has what it takes. Conversely, I interviewed someone, and I won't say the specific institution, but a very, very large investment banking institution. And he was the head of it and very, very well known. And his interview with me was, to be frank, very boring. He and very corporate, very, vanilla and didn't take any risks and didn't at anything that kind of was surprising. And so I think maybe for that specific field, that's the type of attitude you need to have. But I find that the most successful, or the individuals that I give myself the most faith in that it's going to be a good, listen to episode, are the ones who are not only passionate about what they do, but then also are just dynamic storytellers.
Got you. Okay, so there's got to be that attractive persona per se. Like you can't be that boring. I would say it like you have to be entertaining in everything that you do because, like why should somebody listen to you for 5, 10, 15 minutes? Like for instance, I just had a podcast yesterday with a very well accomplished franchise owner, and it was very entertaining because her podcast was, I mean, dude, we were saying words like shit, we were saying all sorts of stuff, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
perfect. This is what I want to talk about, And I'm not saying by far like the past guests I've had, but I've had guests where it just gets super technical, and you're like, dude, it's too technical, and then you kind of just get into that perspective where now, like for instance, if we talk a lot about software, now we just reduced our audience from like 80, 90% to about 5 to 10% of people that actually know about software and code. The rest of people are gonna be like, dude, this is not for me. I don't want to talk about this. And then boom, I think that kind of, but what's interesting is, and then let me know if you agree with this. There's a lot of businesses that started 10, 15 years ago before podcasting became a thing, aren't used to being relatable or being like
Mhm.
personable, right? Especially the founders, right? Because they just, like you said, the corporate guy is like, hey, I deal a lot of guys with suits, so this podcasting thing to me is kind of weird because now I got to sound natural,
Right.
And tell me, how much do you think people are attracted to that natural conversation from the CEO as opposed to that very robotic suit guy?
Yeah, I mean, we'll think about it, and especially I love listening to podcasts as a whole. I mean, the goal for anyone trying to interview someone else, you can look at some of the greats like Howard Stern, or you can look at some of the most popular podcasts on Spotify or whatnot. These individuals make the conversation very conversational, something that you almost make the other individual forget they have a microphone in front of them. And by doing that, the listener then feels like they're a part of the conversation when they're listening to it. They feel like they can that they're in the room with them while the conversation's happening, and that gives it that kind of almost fireside chat that allows the individual not only to stay entertained but feel like they're connected to the speakers in some sort of way.
Got you. Okay, so this is a very interesting question. So, do you ever talk about controversial issues?
Yeah. So it's interesting, right? I had the CEO of Chegg, right,
Okay.
which is a converse. Chegg, they do the textbooks, and
Mm-hmm.
their CEO is a HWS alumni. Our library is named after him, for example. The
Oh,
day I was supposed to interview him was the day that their stock dropped. I think it was like 40 or 60%, due to reports coming out that students weren't using their software now that we were coming out of COVID. And I remember his assistant sent me an email like, now's not a good time, like whatever. And when I eventually got the opportunity to interview him again, I was getting the school who, was the one backing this podcast being like, don't ask him it, don't ask him it. And I had some other people that were like, probably stay away from that question because it's still fresh and soft. But I ended up asking him questions about his leadership style and questions about his crisis control management skills when you have something such as this. I didn't necessarily ask him, why was it that the stock dropped in the first place? What is your company's performance looking like right now? Kind of putting the pressure on him from that side, but rather like, obviously we all see this type of thing happening. You're the CEO, you're the guy who's supposed to guide the ship. What are you doing to make sure that not only your investors, but your employees feel confident in you as an individual?
yeah, what do you say?
You know what? You kind of gave me a corporate answer, but he was just kind of pretty confident in saying, hey, listen, like at the end of the day, there's ups and downs, there's ebbs and flows of any company. We're very confident that our new innovations or the new products we're releasing will take us back up. And the reason that it dropped in the first place was because he himself made a sound bit to an investor that told them, yeah, I expect our stocks to drop, or expect a decrease, which made all investors pull out. And he kind of made a joke. He's like, yeah, so I'm going to keep my mouth shut in the future. So he was pretty lighthearted about it. And they actually have increased since then. But to go back to your initial question of putting those fiery questions under people, I think you definitely need to some extent, but not to the point where you then lose them for the rest of the conversation because they're afraid about what might come out of your mouth.
Yeah, I know. There's that, especially when you have investors. Like in my company, I don't like taking people's money for the perspective of every dollar they invest in you means they have a dollar worth of extra control. And I mean, which in a way it's kind of good, but in a way it's also like, let's say you believe the sky is blue and they believe the sky is red. And if you go against that, well, they got the money, right? And in a way, which is kind of
Hmm.
funny, and let me know if you also think the same as well. Most entrepreneurs get into business for the sake of providing value and hoping that they would get freedom. But what ends up happening is they end up having golden handcuffs, right? Because even if you sell your
Yeah.
company, right? Let's say you sold your company for 20, 30 million, they're still going to keep you as a founder for at least 5 to 6 years for the transition process. All right. So now you work for the new owners. What
Right.
do you think?
And so for me, I think that comes back to your initial mission statement, mission values of creating the company in the first place. Whereas if it's something that you've created from the get-go, that you think the mission, whether it be to reduce landfill waste or to increase, equity within, educational systems, I feel like that in that event, you will stay with that company regardless of what the value in terms of monetary is coming to you. And so, yes, it can be hard to break out sometimes. And it's not even just for entrepreneurs. I think maybe even I'd argue that that's less of a case, that golden handcuff scenario with entrepreneurs, because they're more tied to their idea and making sure no one else changes their idea than they are about the money that is attracting them in the first place. Because let's be honest, not a lot of us entrepreneurs are the ones in a position where we have golden handcuffs. That's very rare. I think honestly, speaking for me personally, going into corporate finance in the next few years, that's very golden handcuff scenario where you got to look out and be careful that you are continuing to be happy despite what kind of money people are throwing your way.
So okay, so I have two follow up questions here, and then we're going to talk about the corporate finance. But in every business, especially from interviewing business owners, what would you say is the most important skill for an entrepreneur, or an important trait that an entrepreneur
Mm,
needs to have?
yeah, and this is, I believe this so heavily, customer discovery.
Okay.
There's a theory called getting out of the house or getting out of the building, which is essentially before you even start to ask for money, develop an MVP before your product is even tangible in any form. You need to talk to as many prospective customers as you can to get their thoughts and their ideas of what their pains are, what their gains are, what about your product is going to solve their problem, right? Understand the perspective of the customer down to a T and every demographic that you might be selling to, because that type of feedback is the most important, because guess who you're selling your product to at the end of the day is those people. So my advice is always to make sure you go out there and don't just talk to your mom and your dad or your best friends. you know you could do it the old fashioned way and go out to the streets and just ask people questions. You can make a Google form and try to send it to as many people as you can. But getting that customer discovery and customer feedback early will help you avoid mistakes in the future.
Okay, I'm going to push back here. Okay, and
Mm.
just feel free to let's kind of go
Yeah,
at
yeah.
this. I'm going to backtrack to Henry Ford, right? When he started
Mm.
the first automobile, right? When they asked him, and he said, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have said they wanted a faster horse, right? So if
Yep.
Henry Ford had gone and done the research as far as like finding out what the market wants, they would have told him a faster horse. But then he, in a way, created a completely different product that no one was thinking about. Look at the same thing with Apple as well, right? With Steve Jobs and I think it was Steve Wozniak, Jobs and Wozniak, right? When the first iPhone, right? No one was thinking about. People wanted it. I mean, yeah, it was good, but then again, the first iPhone, no one was thinking about it. But then they created a new product. Well, I wouldn't say it was necessarily new, but a new product to a market that people weren't necessarily expecting, right? So, what would you say if I was in that camp? Like, hey, man, I want to create something that people aren't necessarily thinking of.
Yeah. I mean, so it comes down to two responses. One is, as an entrepreneur, you got to have a big pair of balls, right? You got to be able
Huh?
to kind of take that risk a little bit. And two, you can, from those customer discoveries, and going back to, you want a faster horse. If Henry is asking people, knowing that he's gonna have got this alternative to what people want, which is a faster horse, because it's a car engine, whatever it may be, the essence of what they need, their gains, their wants, their pain points are still there. Hey, I can't get to work fast enough. I can't travel as far. Henry's thinking to himself, okay, well, great. I just need my invention to be able to solve those essential pain points. And that's where my product comes into play. And going back to that, you got to have confidence in your idea to some extent, but also be open to having flexibility, changing certain things, and not be completely strict to your initial idea because, as much as you love your idea, there will be things you need to tweak.
Okay, so let's talk about a little bit on tweak on. Let's say, all right, I ask my target audience, and they tell me, hey, I want a water bottle that I don't have to open the lid, and the water automatically just comes out just by me snapping a finger, right? Think about it like an Alexa, open the water, right?
Yeah.
And which is kind of hilarious. But let's say I come up with that product. In the first year, it's a flop. Second year, it's a flop, right? Third year, it's a flop. Fourth year is a flop. What would you say to that entrepreneur now as far as the tweaks? Is that
Yeah.
something that a
Well,
product that, yeah.
obviously that's not good, right? We want, and my question would be in terms of what have you done since year one to try to remedy the previous years of flopping, right? If it's 4 years in a row and I haven't seen any adjustments to whether it be the marketing, the products, design, the way the individuals you're trying to sell it and market it to, boom, you have easy solutions there. If you're always dynamically changing it and you've tried your best in so many different avenues to fix it and it just doesn't seem to be working, once again, go back to that customer discovery. Show them the product that you've manifested. Ask them, how much would you pay for this? Or do you see yourself needing something like, do you find yourself not wanting to use your hands and drink water all the time? Find out the details as to what your product is not achieving in order to put then more effort and attention onto those aspects of the product in order to try to solve the customer's pain points. But if you're not iterating, if you're not changing every single time that you find yourself, in the red or not working out, then it goes on you, right? You need to continue to adapt and overcome to these types of challenges.
Okay, which is okay. I like where you're going at. Okay, so now this is not even more of a entrepreneur question. This is more of a question of a cultural question, right, and a generational question. Let's say I'm a 45-year-old man coming out with a product. I'm not 45, but let's say I'm 45 coming out, and I was going to market to the Gen Z market, right? What would you say is the peak interest as far as what are like, because there's like what millennials are interested in, or the Gen Z market. What are they necessarily interested in? Is everyone just trying to like interested in like the TikTok fame, YouTube fame, and like how would you market a
I'm
product?
Yeah, to that specific demographic. I mean, I think the not I would some people might call it a cop out answer, and I always a little wary about when people use this as kind of an overcoming statement of like, social media marketing or social media as an avenue towards which you can connect to those types of generations. And I think it's a dangerous statement to say because there's a lot more that goes into than just being like, okay, I'm going to make a little Instagram and pay, a business account fee in order to make sure people know about it. So there, social media marketing has turned into such a more serious endeavor than just creating an influencer account. But to say that that's not an effective way to reach those audiences would be a lie because of the fact that that is where people spend most of their time looking, right?
Yeah,
Nobody reads the paper anymore nowadays. And so find where the eyeballs are going and use that to your advantage. Now, the good news is that within these types of social media sites or within these types of communities, there's so many different niche interests. You see the way that algorithms are able to perfect what you're interested in, what you care about so well. You can play into that in the way that you market your product, whether it be finding your specific age group, your specific demographic, or whatever it may be. In that way, you find the most likely early adopters to your product by using these social media avenues.
okay, so what you're saying is if I'm starting a company right now, I have a business and I want to market on TikTok, I need to learn the new
Yeah.
TikTok dance and go ahead and do that TikTok. Go do the new
Literally.
TikTok
I
man.
mean, it sounds dumb, right? But like at the end of the day, like if you're dancing a dance that was hot 6 months ago, I don't give a shit. Like I'm not gonna look at it.
Yeah.
I'm more likely to find it on my feed if it's with the times and it's current. Which, going back to your initial statement, if I'm a 45-year-old, person trying to market it to Gen Zs, the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hire a fucking 17-year-old because
Yeah.
that's the person that's gonna actually understand what I'm trying to sell to. And that goes back to just building the correct team, and having a dynamic structure of different people who have different, strengths in different areas of your company.
Gotcha, man. I love that answer there. That was it. Just hire somebody who is in the market to go ahead and be that
Yeah.
brainstorm for you. All right, so let's talk about this. So obviously, entrepreneurship and corporate is not something people mix in the same lingo, right? So what's got you looking at going into corporate finance?
Yeah, this is an awesome story. Um, because I obviously have a passion for entrepreneurship, but more specifically, sustainability and corporate sustainability. And I'm going down. I work for Deloitte, right, which is
Mhm.
you know big four firm doing financial advisory. But last summer, my summer internship, which in my opinion is a very crucial internship within your career, track, is your junior to senior year college internship. I had an offer to work at a real estate firm in Boston, selling real estate, doing, basically, sales job, right? And had another offer to go out to Bozeman, Montana, and to work for a 30-person company selling fly fishing trips all over the world. So it was like a travel agency, but for specifically fly fishing. And I can vividly remember where, I made the phone call to my mom being like, hey, and I got paid nothing to be out in Bozeman. It's like, hey, I'm going to do the Bozeman gig. And, I love my mom. So she was, supportive, but I definitely had, she was definitely like, what the hell? Like, how are you going to transition from that to what I'm doing right now? And I think that what corporate does for someone of my age group and maybe even someone who has career goals that are maybe outside of the corporate cycle, right? I eventually do want to go back into the world of entrepreneurship, specifically within corporate sustainable structures. I was able to tell my employers at Deloitte and through that rigorous interview process that, listen, I might not have interned with you guys or the real estate firm or some IB thing when I was in college, but I did intern with a small company that allowed me to do a little bit of marketing, do a little bit of accounting, do some sales. All of these different aspects of what a large corporation does, I was able to do in one summer with a lot of proficiency. And so to articulate that to my future employer who wants somebody who can be dynamic, who can communicate ideas effectively, even if it is within 100, 200,000 person company, I think that that was a really crucial step in allowing me to be hired. And now, being that I am in this corporate structure, I am very excited to be in the type of system that is corporate training. And I know a lot of people are a little bit hesitant when they say that because they're like, getting into corporate, it's so regimented. It's so, this, and that. You always got to please the big men. Me right now, in my mentality, and maybe Emmanuel can call me in like 2 months and I might be saying the exact opposite. But for right now, my mentality of having something that's super structured and rigid to teach me the fundamental skills that I do not yet have, I think is going to serve me so, so well for when I eventually want to transition back into the world of, whether it be the outdoors industry or entrepreneurship or both, because of the fact that I view it as another year or 2 years of school, right? There is
Hmm.
nothing more that gives you, real life work experience. That is really truly what you go to college for, is to be able to have work life experience. You could go get your MBA and you could go study for another 5 years, but this is all building up so that once you get to the job, you're able to perform and get real world experience. So that's my mentality as to why I chose the position. And that's why I'm still to this day very excited.
So what kind of skills do you think you're going to get from the corporate world?
Yeah. So I think there's lots of tangible hard skills that I obviously will be working on. I make expensive PowerPoints and Excel sheets, and that's cool and that's fun. I can put that in the bottom of my resume. But what I think is more important is being in a corporate environment as a whole and learning about how a corporate structure works, right? This could be from anything like how do you handle HR relations? How do you go to client meetings and present ideas effectively? How do you deal with clients that are pissed at you, right? How do you deal with getting an email on a Friday night at 8 p.m. right before you're about to go out? These types of situations that will eventually arise. How to dress for like a cocktail party? How do you network effectively on those happy hours at the end of work? These are all things that may not necessarily seem like learning experiences in the moment, but will give me the tools and the mechanisms of how to interact within a business structure that I can then come back and put into whatever I do in the future.
So, out of curiosity, how do you dress for a cocktail party?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. I mean, everything depends, right? But I mean, I'd say I'd put on a nice pair of slacks, or if you want to do a little bit more casual, I'm a big fan of the Lululemon Commission or ABC pants. That's very popular among the youth these days. A little button up, and if you want to get spicy, just a sports coat. You can take it off when you enter in if you see no one else is wearing it. No tie. That's the other thing, though. Ties are on their way out for sure within corporate America.
Ties are on your way, man. I'm a tie guy, so I gotta what, bow ties?
Yeah, if you can rock it, I mean, if you can rock it and it looks good and clean, obviously do it. Me, I rock it without the tie. I don't have enough chest hair though to button down. So maybe if I get some chest hair.
I love it, man. I love it. Hey, so if you've got some, so if you to determine, this is the determining factor if you're going to put a tie on a cocktail party, is if you have chest hair, okay,
Yep. Yep.
unbutton it. If you don't have chest hair, then cover that shit up. Okay,
Yep.
so okay, so
You got it's a dominance thing, if you've big burly, then you got to have that kind of dominance and confidence over everyone there.
so you just said that, which kind of like segues into this question I want to ask here is body language. All right. So let's say three guys come into, or guys and girls come into a party or a networking event. Let's reference a networking event. One of them's a little timid, doesn't want to associate themselves. The other one is kind of outgoing, and then you have the different personalities, right? How much of a factor do you think body language plays into networking?
Massive, massive, massive. And it's a little bit of a cop out answer, but it's not necessarily about you don't want to be timid. But you also don't want to be super confident, right? You don't want to be you want to be approachable, I think is the best word to describe it. You want to have body language that is not tense or kind of like, you're kind of worried about coming up to them, but you also want someone so boisterous and out there that you're kind of like, whoa, thrown off. The best way to do it is to be approachable, and the best way to be approachable is to not think about it, right? I think for the most part, on a day-to-day basis, all of us, when we're hanging out with our family and friends, that type of body language is completely what you want to have in the networking event. Obviously, though, networking events are high stress. You're thinking about it so much because that's what you're there to do. But in terms of what I like to do, especially if it's a person-to-person kind of networking event, start off by having a few small conversations with people you might have already previously known, or people that you are comfortable, around, and kind of warm yourself up in a social manner so that you can eventually go out there and really, get into some deeper and more productive conversations.
So okay, now I'm gonna advocate for, like, let's say I'm an introvert, right? And I don't like talking to people, but I have to talk to people. What advice would you give to that person? Because obviously it's all mental. What advice would you give to an introvert that's in a cocktail party or in a networking event on how to go ahead and get the name out there?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's two avenues to it. One's the buddy system, and this is great. If you're able to go in with someone else that can then kind of, tag team it for you and maybe walk up to an individual and be like, "Hey, have you met my friend so and so?" And kind of help kick it off for you, right? And maybe give you the first two softball answers so the conversation starts rolling, and then you can kind of get in from there. But let's say you don't have a friend in that instance, you don't have that support structure. I mean, as someone who is a big, like, I list and I journal things and I love to have, sticky notes all around, I would create maybe a one or three little prompt statements that I would use to just kind of kick it off, right? Where it would be, event specific, right? If you're at an event for, the financial advisory onboarding day one, and you go up to somebody and you're just like, oh, how was, you could be as simple as how was day one, or what did you think of this, activity we did? Or, even more personal, where are you living in the city? How have you been adjusting? these like one-off little prompters that you can do to start yourself really help open the conversation up and give you something that walking into that conversation that you can say, so you're not second guessing yourself when you get there.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, a little bit of preparation then. Okay, so now I'm gonna ask you this question here. Just as are entrepreneurs born or are they made?
Ah, love this one. Love this one. Um, I had someone who actually was the funder of the $10,000 that for the pitch competition. His name's Todd Feldman. Great guy. He has this one statement he always says, which is that he firmly believes every single person in this world has at least one great idea. And I find that to be a very true statement. Now, whether or not people act upon it or give it the time of day to really think about it, that's one thing. But I firmly believe that every single person has that entrepreneurial spirit somewhere within them. And it's all about whether or not they pursue it.
Okay, so it's all about the idea and pursuing it. Okay, so now let's say I'm watching this right now and I'm going, I have an idea and I want to start this, but I'm afraid of my friends and family judging me,
Mm,
because there's always that mindset where you're like, if you take action, you're going to get pushback from your friends and family because they're going to be like, well,
right,
it's not you, right?
right.
It's like I'm pretty sure when you started a podcast, when you went fly fishing, your mom's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Totally.
So yeah, if you can expand a little bit more.
Yeah, of course. I mean, and there's a definite. I mean, that is why entrepreneurship is risk, right? And that in a lot of ways is for those really big risk taker entrepreneurs. They love that aspect of it, but that's not everybody, right? Someone might just want to create that company, that idea, but not having the support of those close to them is definitely dissuading. So to me, it's about almost creating an echo chamber for yourself, right? Finding the type of people that are already involved in the type of idea that you're doing. Or let's say you want to start a seashell jewelry company, right? But you're from the Midwest and your family's like, I have no idea what you're talking about, right? Your first steps wouldn't necessarily be to convince, mom and dad that we should start collecting seashells in the Midwest, but rather to be, hey, I'm going to use the globalized world that we have to start learning about, okay, so what did people in Florida do at their seashell stores? Or hey, I got connected with this small business owner who makes, rock jewelry instead of seashells, and starting to formulate this community around yourself that allows you to not only feel like your idea is, tangible and reasonable because there's other people doing it, but also people who will give you advice and support you if you have any questions.
Okay, okay, interesting there. Okay, so I have a question here, and this is more like an entrepreneur to an entrepreneur, and are you able to turn it off? You know what I mean? Like that, your mind is like a racehorse, right? It's constantly running
Yeah.
with ideas and things you can do. It's almost like, and this is the reason why I asked you, entrepreneurs born or entrepreneurs made, is like, for instance, I was having a conversation with an acquaintance of mine. And I was like, hey, you should start a business, and he's like, well, I don't have any ideas, and I asked him, I'm like, do you have anything running through your mind, like anything? It's like, no, not necessarily. It's like, honestly, I just come, I do my job, and then I go home, I spend time with my wife and my kids. I was like, so then I thought to myself, and I was like, and then I asked other people, and I'm like, especially entrepreneurs who've been in for a while, I'm like, and they're like, well, it's almost as though it's like a possession. It's almost like you don't have, like, once you get that idea, or once you start a project, you must solve the problem, right? Like I'll give you, and before you answer the question, I'll give you this example. For instance, so we do marketing, we do a lot of software, and we were working with a company. It was super easy to use their platform, and I was like, oh god, I learned how to use it in a few weeks. I was like, oh my god, this is boring now, right? This is super boring. So then I was like, all right, let me build the entire software that they are using from scratch, completely from scratch. And I'm like, and my staff was like, why are you doing it? And I was like, because I'm bored.
Mm.
And I started building it, and now I'm like, it's to the point where I'm like, I've built it, and then I'm rebuilding it again because I realized I messed up somewhere, and I have to start again from scratch. But for some reason, I like the fact that I'm looking forward to something in the morning, because I usually do a lot of my work at like I'll usually be up at like midnight, anything from midnight to around 4 a.m. And the reason why I'll do that is because no one else is around, everybody else is sleeping, and I can do all my work at that time. And I work out, then I do my work, and I was like, but for some reason, I just want a problem to solve. Like without the problem to solve, it's just like a boring life. So I want to ask you, can you turn it off? Is there a way to turn it off?
So that's two different questions. Can I turn it off? Fuck no. Can you turn it off? Yes. Um, it's funny because I'm in the same way as you, right? I'm in this month period right now before I start my job. I just graduated, so I'm at home. I'm kind of just getting prepared, and I fucking hate it because I seriously have nothing to do. I'm trying to give myself menial tasks. I got these lists I make all the time,
Yeah.
just to just to make a haircut appointment seem more productive than it actually is, right? But in terms of the perception of entrepreneurs and being that type of person that's go 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 all the time, I think it's definitely glorified to an extent that it can be damaging, right? Where I totally believe it's good to be obsessed with your idea and to always want to be, continuing it, adding to it, doing it. It is not sustainable to be the type of entrepreneur that is completely obsessed to the point that it damages their own, relationships or mental well-being or whatever it is. And so that's easy to say. It's like, oh, just find that balance. That's kind of bullshit. It's like, of course everyone wants to find balance, but the way in which that is achieved is very well summed up in a different guy I interviewed. His name's Andrew King, and he's told me, and I love this piece of advice. He said, take your hobbies seriously. And I love that quote because of the fact that a lot of times people, when they're really obsessed with whatever work life they have or whatever idea they're working on, they think that that should be priority number one all the time. And that anything that, makes them happy or isn't necessarily productive is well, if I get to that or I have time for that, it'll be nice. You will never, ever give yourself that amount of time to go and enjoy and relax if you don't take it seriously. And so for me personally, I'm a huge fisherman, huge outdoorsman. And that's one of the only times where when I'm doing that, I just don't think about anything else other than that. And so for me, it's about being very serious and allotting myself time to do those things, knowing that it probably won't add to any of the things I'm working on with my ideas or won't allow me to move up in my company a little bit more, won't get me ahead at all. But I know that the sustainability it gives to me, the improvement on my mental health, the improvement on, how I'm feeling, that's just as critical important, and so therefore should be taken very, very seriously.
Okay, so now I'm going to push back here, man, because this is an interesting perspective. There is a camp that believes in sacrifice, right?
Hmm.
There's that camp of people that's like, okay, for the next 3, 4, 5, 6 years, I'm not going to see my kids. For the next 5, 7 years, I'm not going to spend time with my wife and my family. For the next this, I'm just going to focus on work. And what would you say to that camp? Because there's two camps. There's people that believe in sacrifice, and then there's also the people that believe in balance. Like, hey, I'm gonna work 8 hours, and then and then I'm gonna delegate some stuff, and I'm gonna come home, and I'm gonna do like a traditional work schedule. What about the camp that listens to this and say, hey, man, I don't agree with you as far as like this whole mentality of make time for your hobbies. I have resigned myself that for the next 9 to 10 years, I'm going to give up drinking, partying, family, and all that stuff, and just focus on work. What would you say to that camp?
I'd say you're playing a pretty risky game, right? In the sense that if it ends up being, 8, 9, 10 years down the line, and if it's something you're totally happy with and you love it and you made the company that, yeah, sure, fuck me. I'm sorry for telling you that you shouldn't have done that in the first place. But I think that it's not as likely that those 8 to 10 years, the time you spent solely working rather having fun, was the reason that it was successful at the end of the day. I think that that is usually not the X factor of it. And I'd rather show up to my client meeting having taken, maybe 3 hours off of making sure the PowerPoint was perfect, and instead got 3 hours of sleep so that the presentation is me more cheerful and energized than being up there and being fucking all over the place, but the PowerPoint looks like it was, made in Venice. So I think that you take a big risk on when you try to do that, go, 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 head down, don't worry about anything. And I think that's where the manifestation of like the midlife crisis comes into play, or that oh shit moment when you realize that, maybe it didn't work out. And that's not to say that you shouldn't take risks or you shouldn't work hard to achieve your goals and your ideas, but make sure that you give yourself some humanity out of it all, right? Make sure you still are a person at the end of the day, because that's how you stray away from being that stiff corporate asshole that all they can talk about is work and corporate, because that's all they do on a day to day. You become less interesting of a person if you segment to yourself to one specific idea, one specific task, and you want to be a dynamic person in order to succeed.
So I have a question for you, right? Okay, let's say my hobby is playing video games. I'm like
Yeah.
super whatever the games kids are playing these days, which is so funny. I was on a flight the other day, and the flight attendant asked me because my bags were heavy. I traveled on my recording equipment, and she's like, "What you got in? What do you got in there?" And I was like, and she's like, "You got an Xbox?" And I didn't hear the question properly, and I was like, "Yeah." But I don't have an Xbox, right? And then there was a guy in front of me, and then he was like, "Oh yeah, man, what do you play?" And I was like, "Oh shit, what do I play?" I was like, and now I'm like, okay, there's people around here, so I was like, you know what? Gears of War, and I'm like, is that even still a thing? Because I played that back in I don't even know how old it was, but it's
Yeah,
like
I
maybe
remember that
eight,
back in the day.
eight,
Yeah.
eight, 9 years, and I was like, Gears of War, and like, dude, you're gonna come up with like something. But what about if my hobby is work? What about that?
Yeah. Um, yeah. That's a pretty one that hits pretty close to home because I do have people close in my life that is their hobby, right? And that is what they do. And I, they're just not fun to be around in the sense that, like, sure, that's your hobby to do work, like that's great, but what happens when your friends or your family are going out and doing anything non-work related, and you're like, yeah, no, I'll just stay home, and be at the desk because that'll make me happy, because that's what I like to do for fun. But listen, none of your friends, none of your family, no one around you wants to do your fucking work with you, right? No one's gonna be
Yeah.
like, hey, yeah, let's go over and work on that Excel sheet or chop it out together. Or even if I'm working on my own work, I'm not going to be like, hey, let's go have a work date, down at Starbucks. What? Like that's just weird, that's just not right. And I think that once again, it just makes you a one-dimensional individual. And if you lose the things that make you happy by not doing them in so long, then you yourself won't be as hard pressed to want to get things done, right? If you find a greater meaning in life than what your work is on a day-to-day basis, then I think that will give you more leverage and more pull. Even athletes, right? Like LeBron James, for example, like, you know, for him to be work, work, work all the time is great because he's gotten a lot of money from it. He's gotten a lot of championship rings. Got a lot of promotional stuff for him. But he also is a big wine connoisseur. He loves good wine. He makes time out of his day at nights to try a new flavor of wine or to go and learn a little bit more. And I think that type of thing helps him disconnect from work. And you have to sometimes turn it off in order to come back to it with a new perspective and a new aggression that would work out. We all know when we're trying to figure something out, whether it be a project or even trying to build an IKEA desk, for example. You're like, I can't fucking figure out where that nail goes, and you walk away for it for like 30 minutes or an hour. When you come back, you're able to figure it out, or you're able to look at it from a different perspective. So turning it off not only is good for you and your own well-being, but actually, in my opinion, will make the work that you're doing that higher of quality.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. All right. So there's something I do agree with you in a sense as to, like when I'm out on the beach or doing something fun, it does kind of give you that, it's weird when you're not thinking about the solution to a problem is when the solution actually comes, right? But I personally believe that there are two types of entrepreneurs, right? There are product entrepreneurs and there are people entrepreneurs. There's the Edisons and then there is the Teslas, right? Tesla was a product focused entrepreneur and Edison was a people focused entrepreneur. And, I just recently found out that Hollywood, like the recording studio, used to actually be in New Jersey, right? Back in before it actually moved to California. And
I had no
someone can
idea.
correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, and the reason why it moved out to California was because of the rules that Edison was put in the recording studios under, and then everyone just like, you know what, I can't handle this. Let's get out of here. But I think like there's two types of entrepreneurs because they're like there's a reason why salespeople, right? Salespeople are also entrepreneurs, right? There's the salesperson and there's the founder. Like give an example. I had a podcast with the CEO of Badger Maps and the co-founder rather of Badger Maps,
Mhm.
and we were having a discussion, and he was like, "Well, I am more people focused, and my founder is more of product focused, right? He's more of the tech guy. You need the yin and yang, right? Because if you're like, for instance, in my company, I have the head of operation, and I have me. Like, I do not like the operation fact. I mean, a lot of and here's the interesting part. A lot of my clients watch this podcast, and sorry guys, there's a reason why you and I have not had a meeting. It's not because like I'm a terrible person. It's just because it's like the operations of the company. I build it, and I'm like, hey, run it. All right, and then she runs it, and it was like, oh hey, we know this gal. And then I'm more of in the marketing side of things. I like getting people in, and then once they get in, they're like, hey, she runs it, and I have make sure I hire phenomenal staff for this, because like the operations is a nightmare. Like like I'm looking at spreadsheets of financial numbers. I'm like, okay, this is payroll. This is how much you have to pay. This is how much you owe to our vendors. This is how much it is. This is how much is marketing, and it almost honestly stresses me out. Right. But then it's like,
Yeah.
hey, Emmanuel, come on, let's do a podcast. Let's do this. Hey, you know what? Let's build a software for this. Hey, okay, perfect. I'll do that. But if it's like, so I think there's like two different types of entrepreneurs there. And just to kind of like, segue into that. But it's kind of just brings me to this question here. What we're having right now is, what would I say, is a podcast, a talk. Some might even call it a debate. Right. And I know you have a very interesting debate career. So if you want to go ahead and expand on that.
Yeah. So, my debate career is something that I didn't never expected to be a career in the first place. I never did like Model UN or mock trial or any of that stuff in high school. But when I was a first year student at college, I heard that our institution had a really profound and well accredited debate program. And as a first year student, I was a little like angsty, being like, I want to prove myself. I want to show blah, blah, blah. And I also thought my mom would be happy if I told her I went to a debate practice. And so I walked and I went to the first, practice ever, and they basically told me, they're like, all right, I'm gonna give you a really simple, debate topic, and you got to stand up there and just try to speak for 5 minutes, arguing for and against it. I was like, all right, like I think I can do this. And I remember I prepped my speech in the bathroom of the house that we were in, like on the actual toilet seat, like writing my little like notes for my speech, and I stood up there and I spoke for the whole 5 minutes. And it was one of the most invigorating moments of my life where I was like, holy shit. A, everyone has to listen to me right now, which is great. And B, like, I feel like my mind is working in ways as if like I was writing a paper, arguing something, but I actually get to vocally represent it. And from that point on, I just became obsessed with the art of debate in of itself. It is its own sport, I can argue, in a way, because of the different strategies you can do, the different positions, and how that dictates how you're supposed to speak. And so it was this really multifaceted, hobby that I got into, and it led me to the national championships when I was a sophomore, and then most recently in January, I went to the World Championships in Madrid, competing against the Oxfords, the Harvards, the Yales, institutions from Asia and Africa, all over the world, debating topics that ranged from, like Asian economic policy to, climate change actions to even like, more philosophical debates about like if God's real or not, for example. And so it was crucial for me to learn about a little bit of everything, but also to just understand that argumentation and debate as a whole has some core values and structures that you need to take and can be used for whatever topic you're trying to debate, And so getting that not only made like getting into that not only made me a better public speaker and, better at, composing and thinking quickly and creating ideas fast, but my essays got better. The way in which I was able to articulate my ideas was cleaner, and it really just enveloped a lot of different skills of mine and made them more powerful. So I'm super thankful that I did it, and I think it was one of the best accidents that happened to me in college.
I love it, man. So, uh, did you now? You seem like a more of an outspoken, outgoing person, right? Now, I'm just kind of curious here. Were you a little bit shy when you were up on stage, like nervous?
No, I'm a stage guy for sure. I, I,
Yeah,
I I'm definitely one who likes the pressure, and whenever I had more eyes on me, I felt like I executed cleaner.
got you. Okay, okay. So the fact that you can garner attention. Okay. Now, talking about garner attention, if I'm watching this right now and I'm like, hey, you know what? I love listening to what Matt has to talk about, and I like the vibrant energy. Where can people find you?
Oh, come on, now you're plugging me. This is what I like. But yes. So I mean, I obviously start foremost is I definitely encourage you guys to go and check out our podcast. It's hosted by me and my producers, actually my old housemate in college, great friend of mine. And so it's called Entrepreneurial Endeavors. It's a little tricky to spell, but the logo is like an acorn with some headphones on it. and it's on every major streaming platform, your Spotify, your Apple, your Amazon. So you can check it out there. And then me personally, if you want to reach out to me, the best way is probably through Instagram direct messages, which is my name, Mattnusom. So that's Matt Nusom. And then my LinkedIn as well. I check pretty often. So, and that's just Matthew Nusom as well. So that's where you can reach out to me. And I'm always happy to talk to anyone really about any sort of, whether it be career development, whether it be, interviewing, networking, podcasting, or just to, get in contact with. So feel free to reach out.
Gotcha, man. I love it, man. I love it. So definitely, guys, go ahead and reach out to him on Instagram, reach out to him on LinkedIn, send him the thirsty M's on Instagram as well. So like, what's your goal for the podcast? 5 to 10 years. What's your 5 to 10 year goal with the podcast?
Awesome. So this is exciting. I'm glad you brought this up because, as you know, me and my producer just graduated, and
Mm-hmm.
so we're kind of like, okay, we don't really have a school backing anymore. Should we just kill it? Should we just stop it and ride off into the sunset? And that was kind of where we were leaning to. But then we had an alumni who's actually the same alumni that did the $10,000 for the pitch project. He's now invested in this company called Proto, which is a hologram company. I encourage you to look that up. It's a full scale like hologram machine that they've made. I interviewed him through a hologram, which you can see on my Instagram. It was unbelievable. But he has been a big fan. He's in Hollywood, so he's a media guy. He's loved the podcast since day one, and so he's like, "Hey, listen, we would love to sponsor this and make this happen, and maybe change the branding, change the image, but keep the essence of the podcast the same, fully backed, fully funded." And so that's going to be potentially it is going to start in 2024. We have a little cache of episodes that we still have on the back burner, which we'll be releasing periodically to up until 2024. We actually just released an episode yesterday featuring a big producer on the Weather Channel. Super dynamic guy, has a lot of great stories. But that's the goal for us. And so the nice thing is this guy has a lot of great connections in Hollywood.
I love it, man, and definitely congratulations ahead of time because I believe in the next 5 to 10 years, your name is going to be you already knew some. I mean, that isn't that the name of the governor of California?
Yeah, different spelling
Yeah,
though, different spelling. So I got the unique trait there. And
gotcha,
he doesn't have
yeah,
he
man.
doesn't have the sexy red hair either. So
Yeah, yeah.
I
You,
definitely
you, you hear that?
differentiate.
You hear that, man? You don't have the sexy red hair that Matt does. Okay, so
Yeah.
you need to step down so he can be governor of California, so he can fix that. I'm not gonna get into it, but yeah, man. So I think you're gonna do a lot of things in the podcast space, man. And absolutely, it was a pleasure having you on. And anything else you want to say to any last words for the? Oh, I forgot to even do this. Did I even? Oh, I didn't even make them. I usually have a list of dumb, fun questions that I ask, but I
Oh
think I
yeah.
already asked. I think I already asked majority of the questions here for the most part, which is I'm like, man, I didn't put the note, I didn't put the notes in here, but yeah, man. So it's a pleasure having you on, man. Anything else? Anything you want to say to the guest?
Yeah, I mean, I think the last thing is to like I said, take your hobby seriously and take advantage of every opportunity that comes your way. Like this podcast is a great example. Emmanuel just sent me an email and I read it and I was like, huh, I could have let that slide past and not thought about it, but I'm so glad that I did it. I'm so glad that I took advantage of that opportunity, and it's just an example of making sure that you take advantage of yourself and your life and the things you want to accomplish. So, yeah, that's what I would
I
say.
think oh yeah, I just remembered the one question I was going to ask. So if you were to use a pickup line to get a client for a business, what pickup line would
Yeah.
it be?
Hmm. It would depend on what the business is, but hmm. That's a great question. I would go up to them. I'd be like, all right, give me 3 minutes and it will be the best 3 minutes you've ever spent listening to someone in your life.
Give me 3 minutes and it'll be the best. I thought you were going somewhere with that. I was like,
Okay, maybe I'll have to adjust that. It's a
oh
double
my,
pickup line. Double pickup line.
it's I love it. No. That's definitely that.
I'll get to their
I,
attention for sure. I bet.
no,
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely depends on who you're talking to. my positive, negative.
Uh,
But yeah, man, absolutely, Matthew. It was an absolute pleasure having you on, man, and definitely best of luck to you.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you having me on, and I'm excited to see the final product here.
Perfect.